down and we will get started. So just in terms of the programming, so this weekend we just have the Sunday series, but then the next 2 weekends after that, they are pretty jam-packed weekends in terms of programming. So for those of you who are following the highest yoga tantra chakra samvara, if you have initiation, then next Saturday will be the chakra samvara series at 10 o'clock a.m. And then on Sunday, we are going to continue with this text of the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra. That will be the last class on the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra until we go through the cycle of the four texts again. And that is because the weekend after that, which I believe is the weekend of the 25th and the 26th. On the 25th, Geshe will give a Bodhisattva vow ceremony. So this Bodhisattva vow ceremony will be about an hour in length. And the idea is that Geshe will lead you through a meditation for arising bodhicitta. I don't know if this will be equalizing and exchanging self and others or the 7-point cause and effect instruction. It will be one of those two, and then take the Bodhisattva vows. And then on Sunday, the 26th of October, Geshe will give the initiation of Baisaja Guru, the medicine Buddha. So if you aren't able to make it to the Saturday, but only to the Sunday, don't worry. The Bodhisattva vows will be included in the initiation ceremony, but they tend to be very kind of abbreviated. So if you'd like kind of a more contemplative experience of taking those, do try to make it on the Saturday. And then in terms of the Medicine Buddha initiation, this will be offered at the Burlington Public Library. If you would like to come in person, please let us know just to help us in terms of like preparation with chairs and drinks for people and things like that. But it will also be available to stream at home. However, Geshe-la's request is that since it's an initiation, it will only be streamed live. So this Medicine Buddha initiation, this leads us into our event, which will be like in that sort of between Christmas and New Year's period of the holiday season. So the last couple of days in December and maybe the first in January, we still have to figure out, fine tune the dates. We'll have a Medicine Buddha retreat. And so Geshe will lead sessions of the Medicine Buddha practice, and he'll give some commentary with that as well. And then, so usually he does one session a day, Geshe will, and then another will be student-led, or sometimes we invite guest teachers. And I can tell you also that as I guess Kedrip's Christmas gift, I am going to prepare a translation of a new Medicine Buddha related text. So I'm coming to the end of my degree at school. So I have a final exam at the end of this month. Then after that, I have some time. So I will be able to work on this. And by the time Christmas comes around, we'll have a text for all of you regarding the Medicine Buddha as well. And then just the last thing too, we have, these pujas, these group practice sessions happening. So tomorrow, Monday, I'll lead Medicine Buddha. Dave often leads Tara. And also to support people with the highest yoga tantra practice, we have Paula Chichester come in occasionally as well, which people have really enjoyed. And then I believe Deki Lee will be leading a Yamantaka sadhana. And then the following month, I will as well. So just keep an eye on our newsletter for all of that information. And I also try my best to put all of our events up on Facebook and Instagram as well, so that you can keep track of what's happening. So sorry for blathering on. I will invite Geshe down and we'll get started. Grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee, make yourselves comfortable. So, greetings and salutations, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. And again.
Yeah, Kangatashi Dele.
And you can hear Geshe all right? Okay, then let's get started.
This way.
Oh, Jisungi.
Oh, yeah, Kangatashi Dele, don't Rusosogata, you're doing it, that Chishu Shawa.
So first of all, Tashi Dele, greetings to all. We hope that your studies, that your practice, anything related to Dharma is going well and continually improving.
Oh, that did it. That Nanzo Rujini, that Lekacha, so Gita, and Lo Chisendo, Chilodendo, that Lola Pachemeba. But that is why I said that Nanzo Rujini Lekachi. Yes.
So then, of course, our gathering here together today has great purpose. It is a gathering for the purpose of the Dharma. It is a gathering for the purpose of entering the Dharma path. And it is a gathering for the purpose of learning how to clear any obstacles from that path of Dharma.
Oda ane tombo koro yo lila o mardas. Kani lila do lo chis do ase ko lila uchi la yo are teni ta de lila uchi mares.
To direct the mind to the Dharma, this is a very simple phrase to utter from our mouths, but to actually apply this is something more difficult. So I'm performing ritual activities, I'm reciting mantras, I'm engaging in various practices. These are all nice things, but they're not necessarily considered to be the path of Dharma. So how could we direct the mind towards Dharma or apply the mind to Dharma? Well, one important thing to have in place is an incontrovertible confidence in cause and effect, in the law of karma. And then on the basis of that conviction in cause and effect, to direct our minds towards Dharma. This is one way. A sign that one has been able to direct one's mind towards the Dharma is that one has a natural joy, a natural liking to the development of positive mental qualities. That doesn't mean that one has to completely abandon one's engagement and enjoyment in worldly life, but it means that one is engaged in those samsara activities. One doesn't see that as the main thing.
And if
the mind has truly gone towards the Dharma, another sign of this is that the obstacles and the difficult thoughts and feelings that arise related to those, they are not able to disturb the mind as much as they perhaps did. Why is that? Because a mind that is directed towards the Dharma, it doesn't see these worldly kind of successes and failures as the main thing, right? Therefore, when things don't go according to plan, it's not so much going to disturb our mind. So we can see this right through the example of some of our teachers. We see that with some of the great teachers of the Buddha Dharma, they'll experience a health condition, a health situation that is extremely difficult and extremely uncomfortable. Yet despite that health situation that manifests, their mind remains happy and undisturbed. This is a sign of a mind integrated with Dharma. So a mind directed towards Dharma is extremely beneficial from the perspective of our mind can remain happy and relaxed, not depending on circumstances. And also we are somebody who others find relaxing and positive to be around as well. So as much as possible, we want to accomplish that, right? We want to accomplish this with our mind. So as we begin our session, just develop kind of two motivations connected with this, that through this virtue may all of the negativities accomplished from beginningless lifetimes in samsara until now be completely purified. Secondly, may all positive mental qualities be generated. Apparently my voice is getting soft already. I'll try to put some more oomph in there. And if you think about it, right, it's easy to bring forth this enthusiasm because what we are engaged in is something truly remarkable, right? We are engaged in practice which can establish the welfare of all sentient beings, which can lead every single last sentient being to happiness, right? This is something incredible. Without leaving even a single migrator behind, right? If we think about how incredibly vast that mind is, we can easily understand why it is of great benefit or profit to us. And to clarify, we are in the age of Kali Yuga, the age of the 5 degenerations. But as a practitioner, if we take the essence of our practice, we have every opportunity to be able to do it well. And also to clarify the structure of the classes here as presented. At the beginning of the class, we always begin, like now, with the motivation, and then we do a meditation. And in the beginning of the meditation, usually we do a few simple meditations to kind of relax and steady the mind. But we have to be clear that keeping the mind merely in that relaxed state is not enough, right? So this should just be considered the preliminary, and that's not where we want to invest most of the time of the session. So Geshe was, when Geshe was teaching in Italy, he encountered a Geshe Dharma friend there who was teaching at one of the centers there. And he said, it's really difficult to teach here because when I practice like meditation as it should be presented, people don't really enjoy it. But if I just tell them to kind of not think of anything and sit there with their mind empty, they love it, right? So he saw this as a bit of an obstacle. Ni, ale, los. Chobo ale. Right. Ribon. Ah, rubel. Ale. And so, as we speak about this emptying the mind meditation, but also to be clear, even if one is striving in the development of samadhi, of single-pointed concentration and chooses a neutral or a non-virtuous object. So neutral, Geshe gave, I think, the example of a stone, a flower, and so forth. Even if one is able to develop a measure of samadhi based upon that, because the object is not virtuous, this can lead to obstacles in future lifetimes. If one is reborn human, one could have a propensity for sleep, one could have a duller intelligence faculties, and if one is reborn in the animal realm, a deep samadhi but not on a virtuous object is said to create the cause to be reborn as a turtle. So it doesn't exclusively have to be a turtle. This is the one that the text mentioned as sort of an example, but any sort of sentient being that likes to sleep or that moves very slowly or something like this, right? This could be an example. So if we are someone who is a Buddhist, then, as the object of focus for developing concentration, if we're choosing a form, right, it is much better to choose an image of the Buddha or of Tara or of Avalokiteshvara or of Manjushri and so forth. And in this way, the practice of concentration is conjoined with a practice that is known as the mindfulness of the Buddha. And this practice becomes a condition to receive many blessings, which can lead to quicker progress on the path. So when we look at the iconography of various Buddha figures, oh, you can't, sorry, he's at the other side of the room, so you can't see him. So Maitreya, for example, he has a stupa just on his crown, just in front of his Ushnisha. And Tara, for example, she has Amitabha at her crown, and it's similar with many other enlightened deities. This is kind of a symbol, a reminder of this practice of the mindfulness of the Buddha. So using the virtuous object for this practice of focus is really the most effective way because it allows us to amass a collection of virtue, develop samadhi or single-pointed concentration, and many other positive practices. So sorry, a little bit too long of an introduction for some folks maybe, but let us take a moment to focus the mind as was mentioned. We are going to relax and bring into evenness the body and the mind. And if we can think of the mind as the sun and the distracting thoughts as like clouds, we know that if we don't grasp at those clouds, they will just float away of their own accord. So do not follow those thoughts. So we're going to do an easy practice of the placements of mindfulness. So to do this, we're going to direct our attention to the rising and the falling of the breath. And as we do this, we'll do a practice of close mindfulness of feelings. Is it a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling that arises here?
Ligshil tawa ina tsawa kani, ngola tawa ina tsawa manda, yuda mandu seya tunyo gumoni ta, tayashi. Ligshil tawa ina tsawa kani, ngola tawa ina tsawa kani dumis.
With the mind in this place of equanimity, what is the feeling of the sensations on the external parts of my body? What is the feeling of the sensations in the internal parts of my body?
Noji lima dewa sa tandi yoba, tandi ne tandi la yuwa, tani dene kandi tsawa yungati.
If you're somebody who is experiencing illness right now, take the mindfulness to the part of the body associated with that illness and notice what kind of feeling is arising.
Wata tema nyasha tandi roba tela tene ta lise shawa lele yo soba kachimu.
Through practicing this close placement of mindfulness of the body and feelings here, think that in this way, the mind becomes peaceful.
Chomevi tsawa notu kanga nyayawa noji ta yini la. Ta lise, lidewa se, wata tunyo gumona lele yo soba.
Think that any unpleasant thoughts, feelings, conceptions I may have been experiencing, like a rainbow, these dissolve into the sky. And then in this way, the mind and body become at ease and peaceful.
사실 부서 주방인데 세 돈요 뒤에 돌았다. senje sabe 부서 주방이 딱이 소바지.
From bringing out the fundamental mind's aspect of neutrality, of equanimity, think now, through my practice, I will plant the positive seeds in this field which has been cultivated.
가제 터터터 뭐 지워서 어디야 많이 봐. 가제 터터 세 것이 내가 것이네.容易有这个的부서 주방이 쇼了吧. 딱이 소바지.
And thinking as much as possible, not just for my own sake, but for the sake of all. I wish to tap into this mind's potential and wish to activate those potentials and positive qualities. In this way, I dedicate myself to the welfare of not just myself, but also all other sentient beings.
강에 루즈 자완다고 지대 나나신 소소지고 라고 지다 소대가 디가 어느 레벨 자추슈 세 자추슈 가디리나요다 강에 모아서 기체도 소지.
At the root of the obstacles and problems that I experience is this false conception of the self And connected with that, the self-cherishing or self-centered mind, which sees myself as paramount, myself as most important.
Geshe Sonam kaze jachewa yin tas, ane se goshe toba chido. Dela tene luyo yabo. Odani lila pemba, sela pemba ta halaya venesachi. Somando.
One of the amazing things is that the more that I direct the mind away from that self-centeredness towards a concern about the welfare of others, the vaster that mind will become. As the mind becomes vaster, the elements within the body, such as the winds and so forth, become more balanced. In this way, the body and the mind become more at ease and healthy.
Dunyoga se ya bote. Ane gewa to chishu, yede puzutsubi shulu tapa, ruwa chizo ye teta yunwa, sowa chichi teta yo.
The best possible seed that I could that I could plant within the field of this fundamental mind of equanimity is the seed of the wish to benefit others. May I receive the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to do this. Therefore, I will make single-pointed requests. So we'll do the prayers. Bai chom den de jin she ba ra chom ba yan da ba zo pe sang ye je ba dang sha su dem ba de war she ba je den gem ba ke bu du e ka lo gyor wa la na me ba la da mi nam gi tem ba sang ge chom den de pe ja wa sha gya tu ba la cha ze lo che de kyab su chi ho tenpa chon den de deshin she ba ja chon ba yang da ba zo be san che je ba dang shab su den ba de wa she ba je den chen ba che bu de we ka lo jo rwa la na me ba la da mi nam gi tenpa song ge chon den de be ja wa sha kya tu ba la cha se lo che de kya su chi ho tenpa chom den de te shin she ba ja chom ba yang da ba zo be song ge je ba dang shab su den ba de wa she ba je den chen ba che bu de we ka lo jo rwa la na me ba la da mi nam gi tenpa song ge chom den de pe ja wa sha kya tu ba la cha se lo che de kyab su chi ho. Short mandala.
So ji pegi juji mido cha rira linji nide gyamba di sangi jindu mide buwagi jogu nanda jinla chebar sho idam guru ratna mendala kam niryata yami.
Geshe will lead refuge and bodhicitta.
Chudon sogi chunam la changshu bardu dani gyausu chi dagi chenyen gibe sunam gi jola penshir sange joba sho. Chudon sogi chunam la changshu bardu dani gyausu chi dagi chenyen gibe sunam gi jola penshir sange joba sho. Chedan sogi chenam lai jangjo bardu dani kyausu ji dagi chenyen gibe sunam ge jola penshir sange joba sho.
뭐야 다 나서 올라게 제대야 단 지고 여보지 그건도 다 디제다 나서
So all of the effort that we put in here, the work that we are doing, we want to make sure that it leads to a good result, right? Because that's why we're putting in the work.
다 대원 지고 되니 여보라요 뭐야 다 뒤는 다 지고 라나메 반 지고 야쇼데
And so there are many possible good, right? Good is very general, good results. But in terms of the good result we want to direct ourselves towards, it is so the Tibetan word is lana mepa. It's the unexcelled, the unsurpassably good result. That's the one that we want to aim for.
단 지고 야쇼 되는 지고 요나 다 대도 템비가 저요 야쇼지 그 요마도 어느 뭐다 대 저그면 난 지고 그센드야.
So then what follows from that? What follows from that? If we want to have the best possible result, this means that we have to also accumulate the best possible causes. If we don't exert ourselves in accumulating the particular causes, we can't just say we want the result in the absence of that.
땡에 내서도 탐바지래. 살림하거나 살림하기 저터가래다. 에보거나 에보기 저터가 지발해도 왔어.
And, this actually just makes sense logically. We know in terms of ordinary things, if we want to be able to harvest oranges, we have to first plant and cultivate orange seeds. If we want to harvest apples, we have to plant and cultivate apple seeds.
하도 매일 공부 깔다다 도저 대시 대용다 도저 야부지도 왔어.
And so if we speak about certain kinds of objects of attainment or aims, some of those could be rebirths in the happy realms, for example, in the human and the Deva realm. And so, yeah, those are pretty good, we could say.
다 이나요 다 어다 된도 그 기워지도래 네가 거다 사실 소화래 되니 이나 기워 일다 기워지야 왔어. 이나요 그 로지 거를 땜버지래요. 왔어.
So birth in those realms, in the human beings and the Deva or the God realms, it's pretty good. There is happiness that can be experienced there, but we know that the happiness there is not stable. It is not reliable. So this is a drawback. Yeah, zuchu chenpo mogapu. So there's a story from the scriptures, and the story is related to Ananda and Modgalyayana. So Modgalyayana was the Shravaka disciple of the Buddha who was the most developed in sort of miracle powers. And because of these miracle powers, he could see that Ananda, who was the attendant of the Buddha, that Ananda's nephews, who were monks, that they were not at all applied to Dharma practice and that they really preferred to engage in worldly activities.
뭐 이사마로 가와이.
Konso chapares nga chana ine konso nyaman chede yomare. Marebe. Okay, sorry. So I think so. Geshe is saying they probably were not monks at the time of the story. So my apologies. So anyway, so Modgalyayana, he was seeing that these nephews of Ananda, that they weren't interested in Dharma practice whatsoever, and that they were much more interested in the activities related to attachment and so forth. However, because his miracle powers, his siddhis were so developed, he was able to take them to different realms. He took them to the peak of samsaric existence in the formless realm, also through all of the various deva, god realms, and so forth. And he showed them the drawbacks of the attachment of all of the pleasures from the food, drink, beautiful women, and so forth, that these were not something lasting. Seeing that all of these, despite highest realms within samsara, had no essence, then they developed the wish to be monks and practice.
다 콘소가 센젤도 내바시요 말이죠. 또 한번 보지 단디 있는데 되는 콜로베 콜로 대초 있는데 어다 던지고 한번 보지 센젤 내바시게 할래봐 잡아 첨보
로소
아니 컨트롤 사고 어다 센젤 내바시니 다
라든소
대지만 매바지
둘리아 로아 And so yeah, so Geshe is just clarifying when we speak about the deva or the god realms here, right? We are speaking about worldly beings, right? So they are still prone to like afflictions like anger and in particular attachment. And sometimes due to those afflictions, actually, the devas can manifest in ways that are profoundly harmful to all sentient beings. And this is why when you look at, for example, some of our tantric deities, if you look at Chakrasamvara or Vajrabhairav, for example, they trample under their feet these godly beings. And that represents subduing them so that they do not cause harm. Anyways, so long story short, so not to meander further there, the idea of this is that we should understand that although human and deva rebirths are relatively happy, right, that happiness is not lasting and that there are still problems present. Karin sen mutu ni di drugores tarbadroela, roa? So we should understand, though, that higher rebirths in human realms, especially, that these, we can't say they are objects of abandonment, and that is because we need to secure those types of rebirths to continue to cultivate. But they are not the ideal. So we understand, right, that sort of as a bridge to get where we need to go, then these human rebirths, for example, these are not objects of abandonment. But at the same time, we should understand that they are not the ideal because they are not providing lasting happiness. The ideal is to reach that state of moksha, liberation, a state of bliss or happiness that is completely untouched by suffering. We know that in the human and deva realms, right, we say that samsara has no essence. So even though they are relatively happy, right, we are still imprisoned. We are still imprisoned in this wheel of samsara, in the wheel of cyclic existence, and problems are eventually going to come. 자기 저 담야 된소로 yeah 하고성 yeah 하고성. So in the Pramanavartika, in the treatise on valid cognition, it gives a I don't know what this kind of trap is called. It's like a leg hold trap, right? So when an animal steps into this trap, it shuts. So that is what samsara is likened to. It is likened to this dangerous metal trap.
어다 뭐 구석에도 앉아도 지지도 앉으니 드는 거 앉아져요. 그래서 tempo가 기본이네래요.
So grasping at true existence of persons, grasping at true existence of phenomena, this is like a trap which keeps us locked into this wheel of samsara. And as long as we're there, we won't be able to experience real happiness or freedom.
어다 던지지 다 손지가 다 칭이네서는 나도 취소이 있어야 돼. 타가이 치는 거야지나 다 칭이는 도가서 저거 말해.
And it is for that reason that the Buddha himself stated that when one says that one is practicing the Dharma, practicing the teaching, that teaching or that Dharma should be one that is aimed towards liberation or moksha.
어다 되는데 어다 대 토자준이 다 갈래 자켓을 다 뭐야 대매 이너래 대체 이너래 하와 그걸 지바로 왔죠.
And this liberation is an object of attainment, and this liberation from the afflictions is an object of attainment which is shared between both the Mahāyāna tradition and the Śāntideva tradition, most of which now we know today as Theravada.
어다 되래 다 이나요 다 손지 선바수이는 어다 소소 타와 지보는 거거든. 어다 소소 너무 얘도 아까 나로 와서
However, the Bodhisattvas tell us that our liberation alone, merely that, is not sufficient, because all of the sentient beings who have been our family in previous lifetimes, they are still there.
어다 때 가지고 가니라 너지 말다 손지 선바수 이네 노면도 어찌도 다 니에 자치지 소유하래서 그렇소.
And when the Bodhisattvas say our family of sentient beings, it's not just like us, where we say it like kind of like as a meaningless sentimental thing, but they really mean it, because the Bodhisattvas really do see every last sentient being as their family.
나도 다 가시 고사라 이 치마토 안다 어찌도 손지 선바 파파를 내서나 그것도 꾸바도 라바르지 좀 발루키지 내서나 예티가 타바 토발에 대시 쳐가지고 도와 용기 왔습니다.
So it's almost an unbelievable thing, but the scriptures tell us that when a being becomes an Arya Bodhisattva, they are able to give away a hand or a limb to another and experience the same feeling of bliss that a hearer experiences in the state of moksha. So Geshe is saying he's just putting it out there. It's maybe like too unbelievable or too weird to get your head around, but still it's his duty to put it out there.
That's what you ask Korosu Tapa Nipa Cheton, Kangay to watch in Yungi. So what you think? Conditioning as well,
Of course, the idea here, right, is that they are kind of so powerful that even doing something like that, it's not going to disturb their mind or disturb their bliss, right? Such is the spiritual power of the Arya Bodhisattva. And so you can find all of these teachings, if you are curious as to the source of these teachings, you can find them in the Umalajupa, the Mahāyāna, pardon me, the Entering the Middle Way text. The other thing that needs to be clarified here is that those bodhisattvas, they started out as ordinary beings just like us, and they got to this state of practice through continuously training their mind, repeatedly engaging with the training. Yeah, 되네. Subjunction sempa. Right. So we also know that these evolved bodhisattvas, these beings, right, when they engage in acts to benefit others, they do this really being able to see, even if the being who they're helping is an animal or something, really being able to see them as close to them as their mother, as close to them as their father, and so forth.
토자 시우 주는 토자 시우 리기 토자 시우 챔비 어느 토자도 sonsa
And so as we talk about training our mind and training our mind and training our mind, we can understand this progression as the practices related to the stages of the path of the small scope, to the stages of the path of the middling scope, and to the stages of the path of the great scope. So a very long preamble, Geshe is saying. So let us develop our motivation and then we'll delve into the text. So place the mind in that state of equanimity that we developed earlier, that happy state of equanimity. Unhelpful and disturbing thoughts and feelings, the source of these is ultimately the mind. Therefore, they can also be dissolved back into the mind. So the idea is that when we stop all of these outflows of the coarser minds to the senses and so forth, and gather these back into the fundamental mind, we're able to tap into a more powerful, more malleable, subtle level of mind. So it's a little bit like if we have a glass of water with like a lot of sand or some kind of particles in it, and we place it down on the table, when those particles sink and settle on the bottom, then we can appreciate the clarity and the purity of that water. Such it is with our mind. So think, just as I possess the potential for liberation, just as I possess the potential to develop bodhicitta, just as I possess the Buddha nature, the capacity for full enlightenment within my mind, so does every single one of the 6 types of sentient beings within samsara. Therefore, they are important, they are precious. Not only that, but to ripen my own potential into realization, this happens only through the kindness, through connection to all of those sentient beings. In order to activate this potential, from now until I achieve enlightenment, I will train my mind to see every single sentient being as precious, every single sentient being as close to me. I won't be able to guide every one of these last sentient beings to enlightenment until I achieve enlightenment myself. Therefore, for the sake of all beings, may I achieve Buddhahood, bring forth bodhicitta. I definitely am able to reach the state of enlightenment for all sentient beings, as long as I do not set this aspiration aside. So remember that as long as we maintain steady effort, right? If a woodpecker can peck at a trunk of a tree and make a hole within it just through steady effort, what can we as human beings accomplish through steady effort? So we want to infuse our mind with a brave attitude, with a confidence, and with a joy, and then from that basis train our mind. So if you remember at the beginning of these teachings, Geshe connected it to the prayer of dedication, which starts Jangchub Semchok Rinpoche. May the precious supreme bodhicitta not yet born arise. So not yet born arise is connected to the first 3 chapters of this Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra. Right. And so the next 3 chapters are related to the next part of the prayer. Chepa nyamba mepa yang. May that slash at me. Sorry. So may that arisen not decline. So this is chapters number 3, so this is chapters number 4, chapters number 5, and chapters number 6. So that's where we are now in chapter number 4 on conscientiousness. And we can also understand that within these chapters for may that arisen not decline, there are instructions on some of the perfections or paramitas. So you'll see that in some of the verses we've been covering, it talks a little bit about generosity, for example. Ale, right. Right. And so then we can understand also that conscientiousness, this can be seen as like the basis for the practice of ethics. And this leads into chapter number 5, which is known as guarding introspection, because this also enhances our ethics. Yeah. Okay, so Geshe said that you can understand it as being the case for the conscientiousness chapter, so chapter number 4, but it is especially the case of chapter number 5, guarding introspection, that is said to be the chapter on ethical discipline, which of course is one of the 6 paramitas. Yeah. So then in these chapters on guarding introspection and conscientiousness, we can understand that there are aspects of the perfection of generosity and the perfection of ethical discipline. So then you might ask, where does patience come? And actually, the following chapter is actually named patience. So it is talking about the paramita directly. Yeah, so slowly we'll come back to these as we continue discussions. So just two short things. So this description of this prayer as the mnemonic device which Geshe is giving, how this prayer can help us remember all of this. I was thinking if it's helpful for people, I'll prepare like a little diagram with this, maybe if people are into that. So maybe that's something we can do.
This one?
Yes.
Oh, that's ending the got in the leg.
Yeah. Then we have practices on joyous effort, again, one of the perfections, and also a chapter on meditative concentration and a chapter on wisdom. So these are all named after the paramitas directly. So if we develop our mind according to each of these chapters, eventually what we're going to do is create a situation where the afflictions no longer have any place to get a foothold within our mind, because with our conscientiousness and alertness, they're not going to be able to kind of sneak up on us. And so we left our discussion about, I think it was on verse number 14 of the fourth chapter, conscientiousness. So I'm using Batchelor's translation. We are on page 13, verse number 14. So we can also see this fourth chapter and the fifth chapter. Some of you who have been coming to classes previously, you'll remember Geshe spoke about the 4 doors to the accumulation of faults. So we can see that these chapters are directly related to closing some of those doors. And in particular, one of those 4 doors, they are directly acting as its antidote, bakmerwa. And so that is the door of heedlessness, right? So Geshe is going to go through them. So in terms of the 4 doors to the accumulation of faults, the first is lack of knowledge, unknowingness. The second is heedlessness, sometimes translated as lack of mindfulness, bakme. So we see with the second door, right? Somebody may have closed the door of lack of knowledge. They have the knowledge, but they don't have the presence of mind, the conscientiousness to apply it. Yeah. And so then, of course, the antidote to heedlessness is conscientiousness or mindfulness. So we're going to now go directly to the verses of the text. Datung Dejin Dachenaro. Okay. Just wanted to make sure we're on the right place. We know that Kedrip sometimes forgets where we left off. So we are on verse 14. I was correct. No, chichich. And if I continue to act like this again and again, I shall undergo suffering in unhappy realms, sickness, bondage, laceration, and the shedding of blood. Yeah, yeah. So this is just giving kind of like a visual example about the power, the negative power of unwholesome karma.
Malaysia ina kadi ina dipashe dikechi ta tagaru kadi ina deva inas.
So if you continue in this human rebirth to engage in these unwholesome activities, what is the consequence?
Ta tendisa deva ina ta shewa ne shewa la ngendo ma do sa yo ma ngendo do ina liche ba do ta kange zoya me ba yo was.
The consequence is from lifetime to lifetime, you will take rebirth in the miserable states of existence. And even if you happen to be reborn in a relatively favorable rebirth, you will experience much lamentation and pain.
Ta teltane ru so ina ta sanzo kawa jiren do gen ta ru so yo ba ta kare
And so then this is just I love it. This sorry. This is an invitation. Geshe is describing this as an invitation to reflect on whether we're accumulating mostly wholesome or unwholesome karma. And so we want to confess our negativities and understanding, even if we're relatively happy that we've been a good person, a wholesome person in this lifetime, still there's possibly all previous lifetimes where we may have accumulated negative karma. Number 15 verse. If the arising of a Tathagata, faith, the attainment of a human body, and my being fit to cultivate virtue are scarce, when will they be won again? Geshe said he's glad that we're moving on to this verse because the last one was scary. So this one's not as scary as the previous. What it's saying here is that if we recognize the opportunity that we have right now, and if we hold on to this opportunity, right, it is something that is exceedingly rare, that is hard to be won. So think about this, right? Think about how vast samsara is, extending even into multiple universes. Think about how many of the eons within samsara are eons of the lamp, so where the Dharma is present, compared to those eons of darkness when it is not. Of course, much more numerous. Compare this to being in an eon where a Buddha has come and where that Buddha's Dharma is still available to practice. So we are in a very fortunate situation. Not only that, but we have met a... Oh, Dave, yes.
Sorry, that was strange. The sound had become quite quiet, and then just as you said yes, it had returned to being normal again.
Oh, let me just make sure I turned the sound for the musicians off. It is off.
Okay. It was
Is
weird.
it okay now?
Yeah. It
might just be like a momentary connection issue or something. It happens sometimes. But if it starts to come back and stays for a long time, let me know. We can look at changing the settings. But I think it's okay now, right?
Yep.
Okay, right. So
pardon me.
Where were we? No, that's fine. Where were we? 연결승당. Oh, right. So not only are we here at a time where the Dharma has come and where it is available to practice, but we are in a time where a Dharma that is the union of Sutra and Tantra is available to us, right? So we have every possible opportunity. So of course we were not fortunate we are not fortunate in terms of having been able to have met the Buddha, perhaps, when he was actually walking the earth and achieved liberation through practicing with him in person. However, we are available at a time where, due to the kindness of all of the great Indian Panditas, due to the kindness of all of the great Tibetan scholars and so forth that followed them, that the complete corpus of the teachings is available to us, and this is something that is truly incredible. So what our situation right now is that there is this beautiful table with a whole banquet that has been set out in front of us, but we are never actually sitting down at that table. We're always looking around to see if there's a food that's more delicious that we can get. So Geshe said, we have the human body and we have all of these things. Faith, right? That depends on us whether we have that faith or not, right? He can't say for all of us, but we have access to develop it. Kapichi, right. So faith is actually said to be the root of the development of all wholesome minds, all wholesome dharmas. So something that is really important. And this lack of faith can really be an obstacle, right? We see, for example, there are scientists who are open-minded, right? And they engage with studying aspects of the Dharma, and they can see through their instruments that practices lead to positive minds. But because they're not able to bring forth a faith or conviction in Dharma due to their sort of scientific mentality, this acts as an obstacle. Again. So then a question might arise, well, okay, you say that, but even so, there's still many people that are practicing the Dharma, but there's very few people who are actually getting to the point of realization. Why is this? So someone asked this to Lord Atisha. And Lord Atisha's answer was faith. They lack faith, right? So it is something certainly very important. And in the sutras, it also says that one who lacks faith is not able to bring forth the wholesome dharmas in their mind. Another says that faith is like the mother. There is not a single positive mental quality that is developed that does not have faith at the beginning. So when will it be one again? At the end of verse 15, this is an opportunity to reflect, right? This opportunity we have now is something exceedingly rare. Right. And it is the preciousness due to its rarity that is being emphasized here. And so actually the Tibetan word for 3 jewels is kun chuk. So it's actually the 3 rare supreme ones. If you translate it literally, right? Kun is like rarity and chuk is like supreme. So it's the 3 rare supreme ones. So the rarity of meeting these 3 precious gems is kind of conveyed. So you have to say rare and supreme because not everything that's rare is necessarily good, Geshe said. In fact, there's probably plenty of things that are rare that are pretty awful. So that's why we have to say the 3 rare supreme ones. Kun, rare, chok, supreme. So one of Geshe-la's friends was saying that it says in the scripture that beings who are reborn in the hell without respite are relatively rare, right? So why does it say that it's rare there? And why do we associate rare with being something good? So why is the Avicii hell without respite rare? I'm so glad that like Geshe-la is saying that the hell without respite is rare. Like I can't, sorry, just my reflection. It's like it's really nice to know because like we're made to be afraid of it all the time. So why is the hell of Avicii rebirth there said to be rare? Because the causes that have to be accumulated to be reborn there are so terrible that very few would ever accumulate them. And this verse is also telling us to have all of the inner conditions necessary, to have all of the outer conditions necessary, to be able to really engage properly with the Dharma is something supremely rare. Therefore, have a sense of urgency to cultivate it. So we have it all in our hand, but it's also important to understand that not only is it rare, it's easy to lose it. So if we do not make the most of this opportunity, it's easy for it to slip through our fingers. Shimbu. Right. Mi megan shimbu kari chani sungjo che. Yeah. Yeah. Hakusong. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't understand the example at first, but I understand it now. Yes, Hakusong. Not enough feeling, apparently. So I got it. Okay, so the story is that when you are practicing the Dharma, be like a blind person with a louse. When a blind person finds a louse on their body, he or she holds on to it very tightly because they know if it escapes again, they will not be able to find it. So that's how we should grasp on to the Dharma. So also, this is a reminder that whatever we study and practice of the teachings, when we identify aspects that are particularly helpful for us, we want to emphasize and hold those very tightly in our mind. Oh, so you can see, right, that when someone experiences the treasures of what's beneficial to them, they never let them go. Think of our precious His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is always speaking about emptiness and bodhicitta. They are never far from his holy mind. So identify your own treasures. So for example, here, think which of the verses are the most moving for my mind and hold to those tightly. Verse 16, although today I am healthy, well-nourished, and unafflicted, life is momentary and deceptive. The body is like an object on loan for but a moment. So it's, once again, the verse is trying to get us having recognized this opportunity to increase our sense of its preciousness and the urgency of engaging. So when we are in this situation, right, where the elements of the body are in balance, where our body and mind are relatively healthy, it is when our situation is like this that we want to engage with the Dharma most strongly, right? Because we have the capacity. Right. And when the four obstacles to the activation of the Buddha nature, the Buddha potential, are also not present, now is the time to engage with the teachings. Loso. Dipa barche bashik gewame la tatare. Verse 17, and with behavior such as this, I shall not win a human body again. And if this human form is not attained, there will be solely evil and no virtue. So it's really important when it says unafflicted here to be aware of what the context of this is that the afflictions are always ready to pounce. Because of our strong habituation to the afflictions, whenever they get an opportunity to get into our mind, they will. So we have to be alert against that. The afflictions are always waiting to create obstacles towards virtue. And it doesn't matter what kind of activity we're engaging with. If we're kind of walking around having a day out, if we are spending time with friends, even if we are nominally engaged in practice or a virtuous activities, right? The afflictions are always looking for a space where they can interfere. Right. And so Geshe said also, if you have a doubt that human beings are strongly habituated towards the afflictions, turn on the television, turn on the radio, and watch the news for a while. And then it will become glaringly apparent exactly how habituated to the afflictions most of us are. And this is actually something really lamentable, because think about how many people, being so habituated to the afflictions, not recognizing them as something undesirable, simply follow them and are engaged mostly with what is unwholesome, actually. So if we are not on the lookout for this, and we just allow the afflictions to arise unencumbered, we will be led into the accumulation of unwholesome karma. If we are led into this accumulation of unwholesome karma, how will we have the hope of attaining a human rebirth, right? So this is the danger. We can see the force of habituation also beyond the humans if we look at the animal realm, right? Those animals that are visible to us. We can see that without any training, right? Without needing any sort of training or to be given any particular circumstance, they're naturally able to engage instinctually with activities that are unwholesome. And the problem, of course, is that as they become more and more habituated to the unwholesome, they create more and more karmic causes to continue to have difficulties or be reborn in more unfortunate states of existence. So therefore, we need to very carefully refrain from what is unwholesome and engage with what is wholesome as much as possible. If, when I have the chance to live a wholesome life, my actions are not wholesome, then what shall I be able to do when confused by the misery of the lower realms? Yeah. So it would be a sort of a great oversight, right? A great darkness if while we have this chance in this fortunate state of existence, if we do not engage with what is excellent, if we do not exert ourselves in virtue, this would be a great loss. If we're not mindful of this, right? If this is not something we watch, we're simply cheating ourselves out of this opportunity that we have right now. Yes. Geshe was wondering how much to go into the subsequent verses. I think he doesn't want to scare folks. Dave's all for it, like, yes. Dave, your opportunity is coming. There's more, even if we don't do these ones. Don't worry, Geshe was saying.
This one?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. So if we don't engage with what is positive now, right, our chance, what happens is we will remain deceived in the lower realms. So this is something we need to be aware of. And if I commit no wholesome deeds, but readily amass much evil, then for 100 million eons, I won't hear the words a happy life. Yeah. So the idea being presented here is that once we fall into those lower states of existence, then we're not there forever, but the opportunity to kind of ascend again to more favorable states of existence, this is something that is really rare. So we want to prevent falling into those states. Because in those unfortunate states of existence, it said that happiness is not even a word that can be heard, right? They're not a place we want to go. Verse number 20, for these very reasons, the Buddha has said that hard as it is for a turtle to insert its neck into a yoke adrift upon the vast ocean, it is extremely hard to attain the human state. Right. So Geshe said that we should understand that this teaching of the Buddha, it doesn't mean that there is literally a turtle that comes up every 100 years or whatever and only once in a while puts its head through a yoke. This isn't something that we need to take literally. We understand that the Buddha speaks this as a metaphor for us to comprehend the rarity of the human rebirth. So what happens is the Buddha's holy mind, he wants to deliver a message to sentient beings, which is how difficult it is to achieve a human rebirth. He thinks what image would be the most effective for conveying that message, and it's this image of the turtle emerging through the yoke in the vast ocean. Right. So this yolk, it's not like an egg yolk, right? It's like a wooden yolk with a hole in it. And if you think that there's only one of these wooden yolks and that it's floating throughout all the oceans of this vast world, if by chance a great turtle from the depths comes to the surface and puts its head through that yolk, that's how rare it is to have a human rebirth with all the freedoms and richnesses. And think if that turtle emerges from the great depths of the ocean only once every 100 years, then how much even less of a chance is there that he will happen to do so when the yolk is in that part of the ocean? So this is the supremely rare and precious thing, and how lucky, how wonderful is it that this is something that we possess in our hands right now. Yes. So Geshe, he wants to give people reasons to be happy because the Dharma is for the purpose of us being happy. And one of the reasons to think about why we're happy is to think about all of the rare conditions that we've amassed to have this perfect human rebirth. And that's just not like if we look at one aspect of our human life, but really, if you look at the human lives that most of us here have from every angle, there are so many reasons to be happy, right? And so at this moment, in this time, we can be at our very happiest. It is so important to recognize this. Yeah. Otherwise, what happens is we don't appreciate this opportunity and we're always focusing on the negative. We're focusing on small things that disturb us or disappoint us, thinking this is not okay, that is not okay, and this is not okay. And then so much outflows of energy are wasted on that. Yeah, so we will start we will start at verse 20, and that will bring us to verse 21 next time. So understanding this human rebirth, understanding its preciousness and its rarity, bring forth a mind of joy. Let that joy infuse your courage, and then with this joy and courage, engage with the Dharma. This is Geshe-la's ardent request. All of these words that are being presented, right, they're not so difficult in this part of the text. They are words that are full of meaning. They are beautiful words, and they are words that can be antidotes if we apply them correctly. Oh, Longchumba, right, yeah. So, we're able to hear and remember so many of the teachings. In this way, we are even more fortunate than some of the direct disciples of the Buddha. Think about Longchungpa, or in Sanskrit, I think it's Chudapantaka, right? He was this follower of the Buddha who could not even remember one verse. And it says when the Buddha told him to recite abandon dust, abandon stains, when he recited abandon dust but then went to abandon stains, he'd forget abandon dust, and vice versa, right? We don't have limited faculties like that. So if even he was capable of liberation, we definitely are. Yeah. So none of us have, such a heavy obstacle like this that we cannot learn and remember these teachings. There's only one reason that we won't be successful with the teachings, and that's because we don't engage with them consistently. That's the only possible reason that something goes wrong. Yeah. So if we think about Chuddapantaka, right, he was kind of denigrated by his own family for his limited intelligence. And then, this caused him to lose hope in samsara. He entered monastic life. But then when he entered monastic life, even some beings that were kind of like realized, like foe destroyers and so forth, they still looked down on and denigrated him.
Zona sono toro nge shikitani la
Loso.
ta ko hale bi pa chuwa wa pa chuwa ta ko ya po chu chu shen ke ya ga de teze ta po to chu zona ya ga de ta chi
So pinja chi chapa chi ro.
Yeah.
So one of one of the monks who was a foe destroyer was actually he was a relative of Chuddapantaka's. And because he was a foe destroyer, he possessed some clairvoyance. So he used his clairvoyance to think like, I really want to help him, but what's the best way to make him progress? Should I use a peaceful means or should I use a wrathful means? And he saw that actually, if we're only peaceful, it's not going to get him to liberation. But if sometimes we say some wrathful things to him, if sometimes we criticize him, that's actually going to act as an impetus for him to improve. So all of those difficult experiences happened, but ironically, the result was that they helped Chuddapantaka get liberated. In that lifetime, he achieved realization, and Chuddapantaka became certainly somebody who is worthy of prostration and veneration from people like us. So that's like really an amazing story. So this is what can happen if we get an opportunity where the mind can really be trained. And the mind is not like the body where we can wear it out if we train it too much. The mind is such that it is malleable and powerful, that the more and more we train it, the more and more energy we will find that we have. So having understood this, then we should see this moment that we are in right now as the most precious and the most rare. So we'll just take a few moments to do a couple of verses from one of Lord Milarepa's greatest disciples, Lord Gampopa. Gupati roa. Yo. Joe kyo. Ale. Ale, nigme. Yeah, Hagosong. Yep. Sorry. So we are on page 6. We are on the second set, verse number 9. Reflecting upon the abundance of adverse conditions during this dark age, inspire yourself to be patient. So because this is the age of degeneration, or Kali Yuga, then we have to apply the antidotes to the difficult circumstances that we will meet. So Geshe is explaining this as really an exhortation to train in patience. Verse 10, reflecting upon the ease with which one can squander away this life in distraction, diverted by one thing after the other, inspire yourself to be diligent. So the problem is distractions, right? Because we live in a world where distractions are at the touch of a finger. Our mind is going towards distractions all of the time. If we don't try to subdue our mind from wandering towards distraction, we could squander. In other words, we could waste the opportunity of this precious human life. So what do we want to do as a solution to this problem? We want to bring forth joyous effort. And we have to define effort as a mind that takes delight in virtue. This is the definition, because effort does not mean feeling terrible and wallowing in feeling terrible. That's not effort. Effort is taking joy in Dharma.
다 대매 비서는 뭔데 님뭐 조 님뭐 비서라서 봐. 던지가 돈을 다 보게 사실가 저와 용야도 용시 바로 왔어. 다 이나요 다시 땡기는 시는 용기 말해서 이거래스.
Kare.
땡기는지.
Shide sa.
시대. 세위 대화 시댕기는.
Sorry, go ne ko lasho nada po como so.
님뭐 비서와라 때네. 가지고 코네 거 대시 용야요 한다.
Right. Hago so.
던지가 세위 시댕기는지 보게.
It's also really important to have the information understanding that when we engage in samsaric activities or in activities with an afflicted mind, there may be kind of a coarse experience of pleasure, but this is what we know as contaminated happiness. And we know that contaminated happiness is not true or lasting happiness. It's important to understand this. Right. So we know that this contaminated happiness and if we chase after these contaminated sources of happiness, what this does is it creates, through habituation, more and more of a gap between ourselves and that goal of achieving real and lasting happiness. Whereas the more we engage with positive qualities like love and compassion, the happiness that this brings forth in our mind, that's going to make the gap smaller and smaller between where we are now and the achievement of that lasting happiness.
Right.
So it's like if we put all of our attention into a material thing, we know that no matter how well we take care of it, eventually that material thing is going to break down and it's going to cause us suffering, not happiness. This is the nature of contaminated happiness. When we see that virtue leads us to a true and lasting happiness, we'll have trained our mind in a joyful engagement with virtue, and then we will truly be practicing effort. Effort is not something unpleasant.
That's
not to say that, like, even when you don't feel like it, forcing yourself to meditate, that there's no point in that, because yes, of course, that is, it's a useful engagement still. It's still, a good thing, but the point is that is not joyous effort. That is not proper effort as understood here. Yes, so these were the 10 things to inspire yourself. So that is finishing this section of Gampopa. So thank you very much. And I know, especially at least here in Canada, this is a very busy holiday weekend. So if after the dedications you'd like to get on with your day, please feel free. But if you'd like to stay for question and answer, you are more than welcome. Changjo zemjo rinpoche maje banam jejo rechi chewan yamba meba yang gone gondu bewa sho tongni tawa rinpoche maje banam jejo rechi chewan yamba meba yang gone gondu bewa Sho Jambe Bao Jidar Kyamba Dang kundu sambo deyan deshin de da kungi jesu dalo shir gewa di da tamshe rabdu ngo dusu shebe gyawa tamshe gi ngo wa ganla chodu ngaba de dagi gewe tsawa di kun kyong zambo choji rabdu ngo wa gi Gangri rawe gongri shinkan de pendan dewa malu jongwe de shenre ziwan tenzin jatso yi shabe zide bardu tengyo. So bring forth a mind of happy rejoicing, thinking, I have definitely in the session been able to purify negativities and obscurations and accumulate great merit. Through the merits that I've accumulated, the merits accumulated by all through what is wholesome, may every sentient being, myself and others, experience true happiness. Through the power of these merits, may all those possessing negative thoughts, negative intentions, and engaging in negative conduct, may these be completely cleared away, and may they only give rise to the mind of loving kindness and its benefit. Through these merits, may I be able to bring my mind to the Dharma. May I enter the path of Dharma, and may I be able to clear any obstacles on that path of Dharma. So we'll pause there, and I invite anybody who has questions. So just a little pointer here from Geshe about when we are dedicating the merit and when we are rejoicing in the merit. If we don't limit ourselves to the merit of the session, but we think of all of the merit that we've accumulated in the past, the merit that we've accumulated now, and the merit that we will accumulate in the future, we rejoice in and dedicate this, it becomes powerful. So normally we tell people don't be too greedy, but when you are rejoicing and dedicating virtues, maybe that kind of mind of accumulation can be okay. Because if we are able to do this, then all of the virtues that we accumulated in the past, the ones now, and even the ones into the future, we can hook into those and start to benefit from them. So if there are questions, please feel free to ask. I'm going through the tiles, seeing if there's a hand. It doesn't seem to be a hand. Maybe, Dave, do you want to check the messages and socials?
Yes, we do have a question. Sure. TC, did you want to ask this? Or I can ask.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
Okay.
Maybe they're shy. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Dave can be your spokesperson if folks are shy to ask. You can message Dave, and he's very generous.
Stop me if you. Okay. So concerning the Chandakirti's Madhyamakavatara, the question is, the text speaks about the bhumis, particularly in the 11th chapter.
Yeah.
TC's curious about the Buddhist system that uses these bhumis as described. So how do we use these practically? I think is what TC's asking.
Yes, I can ask Geshe this. Sure.
Where do these bhumis, like they're described in the Madhyamakavatara, used in today's systems?
Right, right. Where are they used in today's systems? Yeah, so I think, yeah, if I understand correctly, he's asking like, what's the application of this practically of these bhumis, right?
That's what I'm getting at. Yep.
Then nganso di umala jupa kapla. Then umala jupa liu chuchik di roa konso dawa drapa ko jangchu sempe gi sa kola mambo cheshi jagi dua roa. Ane perna nganso mitse nanglola jangchu sempe sa denso kandes samlo tango res, kandes peshu tang tugi res, nganso soya chiki yore res.
Me ta teji nganso tango 아니 신이를 당한도 다 가와지 보면 거래라 간소 마고 바는 로사 그런 거다 로주를 해야 왔어.
So actually Geshe is saying that the purpose of the description of the bhumis is to lay out the path that we are going to travel in front of us so that we can proceed with a joyful mind. But those are actually reached when we get to those stages.
쇼진을 치게 주셔 니 이사 다 대지 다 치게 주고 다 그렇게
And also to show us that as the Bodhisattva ascends through the bhumis, he or she comes to possess the actual Dharma jewel. So how can we use that where we are now? It can show us the preciousness of the Dharma jewel and how the Dharma jewel is the actual refuge. That would be an application.
공동화 노지코 니마치 도용거 말아왔어. 선어 노지 니마치 공동화 노지 용거 말아왔어.
로스.
현주지 세 현바도 니 현주지 세. 오마니도 녀도 돈에 단단히 쉬자야 돼. 소설라 봐.
Also, as we understand these bhumis and what is involved in achieving them, this should help us to understand that spiritual practice isn't just kind of sitting around and feeling great like the sun shining or snow falling on a winter day, something that happens naturally. Geshe said he's joking. He's always, I think he's afraid of making things too heavy for you guys. But anyways, the idea is that through our development of bodhicitta rooted in love and compassion, and through our practice of emptiness, only then will we be able to achieve these bhumis. They're also translated into English as grounds, and go through all of them, right? So it's to give us that impetus. Right. So we want to think about, if we want to reach these bhumis, how can we increase our courageousness? How can we increase the joyous effort necessary to complete the practices which will get us there, right? Many holy beings actually say that for one whose heart is moistened with bodhicitta, contemplating the situation of beings in the lower realms, for example, this can be a really powerful way to exert ourselves in the practice. Yeah. So think about the famous saying of Lord Milarepa, where he says that it was due to fear of samsara in its consequences that I retreated to this mountain cave. It is through being in this mountain cave that I have achieved a state of fearlessness.
Deswa oda koro tuiche be kala yo ta tama tuiche ki ta ta pomochi yarwa o kongoni kuchi tema tu yar so konje ba shen nela ke yo mare ngan ro itisele ta so choro tu nga ro mare.
And remember that powerful story at the very end of his life, right? Where the young girl who was dispatched to offer him poison, she gives him the cup, but then she says, "Oh, Lord Milarepa, please don't drink from it. The cup is poisoned." And then he says, "Do not lament, do not regret, because I have defeated the inner poison of the afflictions. There is no external poison that could defeat me, but it is my time." And then he drank from the cup. So we understand once the inner poison is defeated, which means the kleshas, the afflictions, outer poison won't be able to harm us. Candice? But also, in some versions of the story, Milarepa says to her, you know, I'm going to drink this because it's my time anyway, and at least you'll get paid what you were promised, right? Because this teacher who was jealous of Milarepa, he said that he would pay her if she poisoned him.
다른 소소라 고가된도
So as we look at the structure of the bhumis, for example, in the Mahāyāna, as we explore these, we should think that I'm not there yet, but these are places where I can go, and then look at the explanations of the practices necessary to get there. This is how we would look at them. If we think of like the 17 great Panditas of Nālandā, many of them were royalty, right? They were princes, but through understanding the Dharma correctly, they saw that the luxurious palace in the life was not stable. It offered them nothing, and they were able to easily leave that completely behind and study and practice the Dharma. So many incredible stories about beings who make those kind of sacrifices. But for us as a beginner, right, most of us are not going to be able to speak about achieving these bhumis right now. So how do we think about them? We think about them as a source of rejoicing, right? Rejoicing in those beings who have achieved the bhumis. We think about them as a source of our own future happiness if we bring forth the joyous effort to get there. We think about them in terms of the practices we need to cultivate to reach the bhumis. This is how we would relate to them. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So Geshe wants to connect this discussion of the bhumis with something that he mentioned earlier on. Remember, we mentioned about the Arya Bodhisattva. He or she can give away their limbs, and when they do that, they experience the same bliss as moksha, right, as liberation. Well, the only bodhisattvas who are able to do this are those who have achieved the first bhumi or higher, right? So that is another reason that we want to be able to get there. Yeah. Before that, in fact, the scriptures say one is not allowed to give away one's limbs in this way. In fact, it's prohibited. Really important to say that, otherwise Geshe could get himself into trouble. So we're not there yet, right? So we practice it as a mental practice, right? As training our mind. So in the Lojong, in the mind training teachings, it says offer one's body, but that doesn't mean to chop apart and offer one's body, right? It is using our body in service. Yeah, so there's actually stories of people who like take things really literally and do things before they're supposed to, and they get into big trouble, right? So we want to keep that in mind. Yeah. Ale. Se kare chene luton. Yeah, yene lagore kande luton. Ale, yeah, di lagore do. So Geshe thinks if we think of the Dalai Lama Kelsang Gyatso, so he was the 7th Dalai Lama. He kind of managed his engagement with samsara to the point that, he's living in the Potala Palace, right? And you've seen the Potala Palace. It's a pretty magnificent and amazing place. But he said many times that he didn't see the palace or even his room as belonging to him. All he saw as belonging to him was his vajra, his bell, and his robes, right? So that was how he kind of engaged with samsara. And he thought about the great treasuries with all of the precious objects and all of the scriptures and texts and all of the granaries and all of the wealth amassed there as being the common property of the people, not as being his personally.
다 대딩 안저 빼자는 셀리 동사야 되고 거면 그 다 된다 알레 모라스 텐트는
Yeah, ngang koma son di lu tang tang zhawa kare. Yeah, jena chi la.
근데 지레 다 된다 알레 당기 텐디 소스 어만 주바데지 다 단다로 소소 다 로도 되레스.
So, you know, we just to kind of sum up, maybe to tie up this discussion, really, in terms of the Mahāyāna, in terms of the bhumis described in that chapter, those are our future objects of attainment, right? This is the main way that we relate to them. In terms of the things that we can actually practice contained within the Mahāyāna, it talks about the 10 perfections and so forth. So in that section of the text, there's many things that we can engage with right now. So we can think, like, for example, if we think about the paramitas, the ones that we've discussed, generosity, ethical discipline, and so forth, if we were to actually reach the perfection of those qualities, the actual paramita, what would we be capable of? Thank you. Okay, TC. Yes, thank you. I hope we covered all your question. Is there anybody else with a question?
Greg, Dave.
Yeah. Greg has put a question in the chat. Greg, would you like to ask, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I don't mind. Whoever would.
Yeah, I know.
I'm happy to ask.
Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I wrote it down because I was having trouble crystallizing the question in my mind, so I just wanted to try to ask it a bit better.
Oh yeah, no worries, no problem at all.
So what I wrote was, it was mentioned that most beings are mired in afflictions arising through habits that have developed over a long time.
Yep.
When I encounter this in others, I am often overwhelmed and quickly find my mind falling back to the lower realms and negative thoughts, speech, and actions. So how should one train oneself to overcome discouragement and maintain strong effort, action, and patience when we encounter so much negative habituation and hurtfulness in others? And then is this remedy the same for overcoming the same negativity within myself?
Right. Yeah. So Greg, I'm just gonna sum up, because your voice got very faint towards the end. Maybe it might be our internet connection, actually. So I'm just gonna say the gist of what I understood, but if I'm incorrect, you tell me. So basically, you're asking. We talked about habituation towards the afflictions and how this kind of drives sentient beings into these very afflicted states. So how does one overcome discouragement when one considers that? When one looks at the sentient beings around and sees kind of how afflicted and confused and whatnot that they are. What is the practice for not becoming completely discouraged? Not only, and then you extended it, not only just for the habituation and the related afflictions of those other beings, but also those within yourself. Did I get that?
That's pretty much it. And the reason I ask is because it's, particularly with others, I notice that it's very easy to get discouraged. It's very easy to, even more so, like, you know, we run into difficulties, we run into problems, and I find myself much more able to handle those. But when others are just being delusional or harmful, or those, you know, you encounter those negative emotions in others, I find myself with much less patience than if it's just something that is even within myself, or just things that I encounter. And it's a real obstacle, I think, to practice, because we encounter it all the time.
Yep, I got you, Greg. So I'm going to put this to Geshe. Nganso ngama gain di channel di nyumong dang nganso gom la tene nyumong den so shu cheru drogi dua roa dene gomshi dabo chagires ane gomshi chane dene nganso nyumong shu cheru drone dene kandesa gare nyungru tang ya kalikaru dabo chik drogire dua dene nganso di nyamlen che tabche che gengina dene nganso di semshen jendak den so samlo tangna dene koronso nyumong hale pe shuk chempo yena samsam nganso tets semshuk chagire duas di kola samlo tangye semshuk ma chaya kandes chik samlo tangures perna ngaronso semyena nganso di nyumong di kiene roa gomshi di yotsang dene nyembo kandes pesha tangores ganso samlo tang tugire dua soya chik yores roa ane dela tene chichana ngaronso zoba gomya yores karinsena soya yores hakogires mi jendag den so ganso katuk soya yomares dene chetsang koronso nyomong shuk chempo yimpe kapola dene ganso kandesla gore koronso kola zoba gomya tes kalekawa ane ganso di denso selpotone tes lunglangires ane semshuk dabochik chagire duas netsu di kaplola ya kandes chik sogoresa
다 디카티를 다 세돈 담는 여지로 와. 디카티를 다 네바 체가 지더라.
로소
다 단다루로 소소 다 보게 원래 때에도 요아를 때는 이나 체 도블레 매이자. 파페가 다다치 보게. 그것도 더 도움도 와스. 다 가제 체 토리야. 그냥 저도 다 보게 시라기 네바 체르로나. 근데 갈래갈래 때인데 편만 자치 못해야 지금 그래서 봐.
So one way to think about it when we are trying to benefit others, but they are very afflicted and seem stuck, one way that we could transform this is that rather than allowing ourselves to feel kind of frustrated or disappointed, we can think, actually, right now, I am not in a position to help this person, because I have not reached a high enough level of attainment myself, a high enough level of practice myself. If I am able to develop my concentration and my wisdom, and if on that basis I am able to bring forth realization, then I'm going to be in a situation where I can truly help this person. So it's just about changing the angle of how you look at it. So that's one possible way of thinking. Yeah. So when we kind of think about it from that angle, what it does is, instead of centering the frustration feeling, it centers what that comes from, which is the wish to benefit. And that wish to benefit becomes a cause of us bringing forth greater joyous effort in our study and practice. Right. So think about the king-like bodhicitta, right? We have to get to that state of enlightenment first, and then we'll really be able to help folks. But right now we're limited. Didra wa kare desiavo commençons. Kalendang duksha and so on. And so Geshe was thinking, like, in the autobiography of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he reflects that when he was a child, right, he would wander through the palace and he would sometimes hear the meetings of the various ministers, and he thought, actually, these people are really self-serving and corrupt. So when I am able to do something about it, I definitely will. So we can kind of make those future plans for when and if we are going to be able to help that person. But we can lessen this frustration if we just remember that eventually through our practice, we're going to come to a stage where we're able to benefit that person in the way that we want, right? Rather by getting frustrated by not being able to really help them. So the Bodhisattvas contemplate, right, that sentient beings circle in all these difficulties due to their unknowingness of emptiness. If I develop the wisdom realizing emptiness, I will be able to lead them to that knowledge. And practically, in our life, right, it can also just be about waiting for the right time. In that moment, you might not be able to say something that benefits them, that gets them out of that pattern. But if you don't give up and maintain hope in the future, there may be a situation actually where you can intervene successfully.
근데 옷이 붙어서 제 도와 있던데 이나나 니제 채통하셔 세더니 오면은 잘 거기다
Yeah. So Geshe said that, you know, and some sentient beings, their progress will not happen until the future life. And so Geshe said the holy beings, they don't pray for those beings to be killed, but they do pray for them not to have longevity, understanding that their development is further off. Because they see that some sentient beings, right, they get into a completely irascible state where, due to this habituation, they're only able to engage in harm. And they're in a situation of power where nobody's able to explain that harm. Therefore, if they don't have longevity, right, the best chance would be in the next lifetime to start again. Yeah. So these are just different ways of thinking about it, Greg, and you could see if any of those are beneficial for you. Really, any way of thinking that you can develop around this that helps you increase your wish to benefit others and that helps you increase your engagement with your practice is absolutely fine, right? So you figure out what way of thinking works.
Thank you very much for that answer. Can I just ask one very quick follow-up question?
Yeah, of course.
I'm just looking at verse 13 that we just looked at. So even though there have been countless Buddhas in the past working to benefit all living beings, because I have so many karmic obstacles, I've not been a direct object of their care. I'm wondering, that seems to be related to what you're saying here, because we're, it's almost like even the Buddhas have to wait for the right conditions before they can help us.
It's like even the Buddhas what?
Even the Buddhas have to wait for the right conditions before they can intervene and help. So is that what that?
Yes, I've got you. Dene shloka chusum nanglula rwa dering junju nganso chusum de sangi dinso matuya dene sangi dinso yang konso semshin jenda gropache tubyagi tutsu samsam gude gogire dua konso sangi yina yang rwa. Absolutely correct, Greg. Yes.
So Geshe
Tempa often, when he meets a difficult person, he tells Geshe-la, like, even the Buddha couldn't preach the Dharma for 49 days because he never met someone who was ready to hear it. So what can I do, right? Ale. Oh, right. And he said not just that, but the Shravakas, you know, they remain sometimes for eon in a state without speaking, not able to benefit beings. So what can an ordinary person like myself do? But yes, and certainly the Buddha, not just the historical, but other Buddhas, you know, after enlightenment, they would sometimes remain silent because they hadn't yet met the person, the disciple ready to hear their message. So you're absolutely correct, Greg, in that it doesn't just depend upon the Buddhas, right? But there has to be some sort of opening karmically in the sentient being to be able to receive their assistance.
That's very helpful. We're looking forward to the chapter on patience.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Greg. Thank you. Thanks for your question. I should have said that if you like the chapter on patience, you're already doing well, because it is one of the more difficult ones to practice. Liking it's not enough, though. We actually have to do it too.
Yeah, I like it. I haven't quite achieved much of it.
Yeah, he's just kidding. Dave, I see a yellow hand. Go ahead.
Yes, we have a question from YouTube.
Sure.
This is from Samton. For a future human rebirth in which we can become nuns, ideally speaking, would it still be possible or even beneficial to aspire to resemble Milarepa in his poverty and renunciation? Or, given the current conditions of our times, should we rather pray to be reborn with sufficient material means to be able to ordain and sustain a monastic life? Thank you.
Right. So I'm just going to say it back, Dave. So think I'm correct maybe in saying Venerable Samten, I'm guessing. So she's asking about, we have this example of Milarepa, who was in this kind of state of poverty where he had to practice. Should we pray to become like that, which would be very difficult in the current period, or would it be better to be able to pray to be reborn as like a nun or somebody like this in a monastic community where we had the proper conditions? Is that what she's asking?
But also enough material means.
Enough material means. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, with enough material means. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Then triwachi dire dua. Nganso Jamila repa kola mambo shegire dua roa. Yine nganso maumba di nangshin chagores. Di yaksha chana karinsena Jamila tanda tutse di nangla dea pecher halepe kale kapo re duas roa. Nganso tutse di kapla di pecher nangshin de tugi omares. Di hakona dene kewa maumba mila repa nangshin rewa majap. Kewa maumba nga kandes laugere tsunma cha. Anicha tsunma cha. Ane dene gompa punsum sopa dan sangsing yopa gisacha mutune nyamlen che tubna di monam jamna gewa ngowasona yagarebesa.
Yoga revesena ta ya ta tache sheta terza melojana ta ya bro was ya do.
So Geshe said that, like, from the perspective of having conditions that make the practice like more easier, more doable, yes, you could pray like this, right? To be a nun in a well-appointed monastery, right, with enough material conditions.
This one, really, that ngazo page chi dobala ta tache to karina kane me ba chitende ka.
And generally, like, this is the case for all of us, right? Like, we want to pray to in our future rebirth to have all of the conditions, both material and internal, necessary to be able to practice the Dharma well. So we could make it like a general prayer, not to encounter the 4 obstacles that hinder the activation of our potential, of our Buddha nature. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's what that's what Geshe would advise. Mila nangshin chaya monon jana chea yerebes yomares ngachana trust. Yeah. Yeah. So I was asking Geshe because I felt like part of what Samten was asking was, like, does it make sense to pray to become like Milarepa, or is that something that's just totally impossible for us? And Geshe's answer is no, like, you can put that aspiration too. Like, if you could become like Milarepa, that would be great, actually, as well. Yeah. And so, and just to clarify, right, there might be fewer and fewer beings who are like Milarepa, right? There might be fewer and fewer beings who are like Milarepa, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any at all. And even from the time of Pabonka Rinpoche, which is not that long ago, we're talking about, like, you know, like maybe 80 years ago or something like this, many of his students kind of gave everything up and went into mountain retreat. So this is not an impossible ideal. They probably weren't as poor as Milarepa, eating only nettles, Geshe said, but it's not an impossible ideal. Teorkari? Chope Rinpoche. Oh, yeah. Right. And so Geshe said, Gen Tunyong Yube. And Geshe said, even just mirap ngumadirwa. Yeah. So I just wanted to get the time right. So even just one generation before, so the generation of teachers who were Kensudelic Rinpoche's teachers, so Geshe's teachers, there was one called Teor Chope Rinpoche, and he took a vow never to stay, like, in a proper home. He was only a cave-dwelling mendicant, and he lived his whole life like that. Yeah. Kawala?
Kuwa tongtong meba, kuwa.
Ale, loso, loso. And so it's said that he stayed in mountain retreat, and only when like his teachers, like Pabonka Rinpoche or someone was giving a teaching, then he would come down from the mountain and he would stay like in a shack or in an abandoned building just to receive, just long enough to receive the teachings, and then would go back into meditation.
아니 콜 시기 가르피와 있는 둘로 있는 자라 가르피와 있는 kitchen 레로지요 말다 못다.
And actually, Teor Chupe Rinpoche, people offered him many fine clothes and many things, but he refused to keep even the smallest of these offerings and would give everything away. So there are definitely people like this.
다대 자지 봉가가 거는 자지 봉가 같은 걸 시시다고 동도야스. 그걸 막가와 이나 다 할래요 말에. 그런 저 세노사가 왔어.
And it was said that that Lama Pabonka scolded him for this and said that like you refusing these offerings, you may not need them, but the benefactor needs the merit of offering to you, so you should accept it.
근데 그 가르지 와르세네 라메까지 노사이자 또 뭐지 시트에서 대대실래 이바들 받대.
So then what he did is, instead of just rejecting the offerings outright, he would accept the offerings for a little bit, and then when he saw a person who was needy, he would give it away as soon as possible. So he adapted his practice like that.
그 사람은 난전 대시사.
Yeah.
Yeah. 난전 대 농시사 라마지 와라.
So Geshe said he has been able to receive the transmission of the Genkangir Wangshu Sarwa.
네.
Sumbum.
Yes, Sumbum.
Jeyabse Sumbum, sorry. So he has received the transmission of the entire Jeyabse Sumbum. So that means the collected works of Lama Tsongkhapa, Kedrubje, and Geltsabje. And the Lama who he received the transmission of this Sumbum from was a student of Teor Jampe Rinpoche. Yeah.
그거 간에서 런예시선절 gemba 추시진도 있어 예사적 그줄. gemba 추시도 토마토리 마 유거라.
Yeah.
토마토리 알레 콤보서 대주주산.
Getrudi Chupe Rinpoche.
So
So the Lama who Geshe received these transmissions from, who was a student of Chupe Rinpoche, he was also very renounced. He spent many years in isolated retreat, and how he survived actually was that he had a house that was near a small monastery, and that whenever the monastery sent out tormas for the Dharma protector practices, he would gather the remnants of those tormas and he would eat only that. Yeah. So this is somebody who was alive until 20 or 30 years ago. So Geshe just saying that there still are people who practice like this.
And
so Teor Chupe Rinpoche in particular, he lived long enough to be able to encounter His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. And at the time that he met the 14th Dalai Lama, he offered his own realization of emptiness as an offering to him. Yeah, so he actually passed, he went to India in later life and passed away there. So it might not be quite as austere as Milarepa, but there are still practitioners in this day and age that are similar to Milarepa. Yeah, so whatever prayers we make to continue our practice, this is very good. So are there any other questions? I see a lot of comments coming out, but I can't keep track of them when they move that fast. So
yeah, so we've got Venerable Sampton would like to ask a question on, which I also had the same question. What are the 4 obstacles that you mentioned?
Riksea gi barche ji kareresa. Geshe said he's not saying them again. I think that he's saying that because he said them before, but don't feel bad for not remembering, because Kedrup doesn't remember either. So
please.
Yeah. Right. Sangsing mepa, right? Barcheji, yes. Kare yopa, barche. So the first is actually what Venerable Sampton was talking about, which is lack of material conditions to practice Dharma. This is the first of those 4 obstacles. Yeah.
아니 야보라 수비 영어도 쳐 봐.
The second is being indentured into the service of kings and so forth. So Geshe said, generally you could say being under the power of another. That's the second obstacle to activating the Buddha nature.
아니 다 되지. 녀모발 할래비 공부시켜.
The third obstacle is
가지고
a strong habituation to the afflictions. And Geshe said this is the most difficult one to get rid of.
아니 부자 밤에 와서야 또 이사요 개와치 대야를 막아.
And the fourth, and Geshe said he's sure about the first three. The fourth, not totally sure, but he thinks it's not having a liking for abandoning what needs to be abandoned and for cultivating what needs to be cultivated. Yeah. So he thinks the fourth one he's a little shaky on, but these first three definitely those are the first three. Sangsing mepa. Di ni parwa. Then in yomong gomshi shuchang. Yeah. And then shipa. If anyone else remembers the fourth one, feel free to jump in. Yeah, I guess she's saying if someone remembers the fourth one, feel free to jump in. No, nobody remembers. We have had these before, but I feel it's been at least a few months. It's been a while. Yeah, go so again. Yeah. So sorry, Geshe, I can't remember the fourth one either, but ask again. We'll make sure we look it up. Any other questions?
Thank you. Yes. So Jeff, do you want to ask your question or?
Yeah, sorry about that. I had to get off mute.
Sorry, Tess.
Oh, sorry, he remembers the fourth. We'll get to you, Jeff. Just a sec. Cut it.
Okay.
Fourth is being under the influence of harmful friends. Yes, I remember them too now. How did we forget that? Yeah. Yeah, that's the fourth one. So go ahead, Jeff. Sorry about that.
No problem. For that story about whether these offerings are accepted or not, doesn't merit depend on the intention of the one offering? How does the acceptance of the offer have anything to do with the punya, the amount of punya that's gained?
Gotcha. Yes. Ko ngamagi drungdi kola chiwachi duarwa. Tene lama di ko inji minji pulia dinso kelengo giredus karin sena pulgen konso gewasa go gireduas. Yine soso gewasa pe kapla soso jimpa tangen gi kunong la tene gewa chambochi chagire duas. Dene soso sangsing tesa di kelendang milen kepar sheda mendu samsons. Dene ko netsu denso kelenya jimpa tangi denso kelenya karichene ke champo resa. Hagusong. Siboladas and the simple deal ko lamachi ko sangsing denso kele maso ami pulpe kapara. Sorry, just give me a second. Dene pabankaram buche ko sheshe tanso inji minji kelengore karinsena pulgen denso gewa drub gogire duas. Yine ko den konso gewa saya konso kunong la tene tso yongi yutsang ko kelenda milen karichene kepar yores ko kemilena daton gewa yores disegiresa.
말은 다 땡기서 코를 배우지고 또 받지를 바피토나. 코르스 개와 또 치가 쓰거라was.
Ale kare nupala tene toki nupala tene. Okay. So the answer is, Jeff, that in the case of a holy realized being, due to the power of the object, the acceptance of the offerings increases the merit. And Geshe said that even though intention is the most important thing, the implementation is still important. And that's why the scriptures advise that when we offer somebody something, if we offer it with our two hands like this, that increases the merit. This is also explained in the scriptures. So Geshe remembers a situation at the monastery where there was this man who was very old and quite badly physically handicapped, but he wanted to make offerings to the assembly of monks, and he insisted on making the offering to each of the individual monks by himself. And a lot of people were saying, like, why did he do that? He could have just given it to somebody able-bodied and they could have made all the offerings. And at this time, one of the lamas in the monastery, who was kind of regarded as a very holy being, he said, actually, no, don't discourage him, because him making that direct connection, it enhances the merit of the offering. So that's also why Tibetans, for example, if they know that they're going to see like a great lama or a great meditator or somebody like this, they always bring offerings and try to offer that to them directly so that they see that they receive it. So where you're correct is that from their side, right, there is a merit of giving the offering and a merit of that mind of generosity. This is absolutely true. But there is also a merit associated with having the offering accepted by a holy being. So they wouldn't receive that merit if the person hadn't accepted. They would only receive the merit of making the offering. But you're absolutely right that the main one is their intention and wish to give generosity. That's the main one. But the other one is also an enhanced merit.
Oh, okay, so a follow on to that. Patrul Rinpoche was famous for just walking away after a teaching was concluded and leaving all of the offerings there. Do we say that in this case, Patrul Rinpoche has less compassion than what Pabanka?
Because he's not giving them that opportunity for accepting it, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Then za Patrul Rinpoche, then sunshe chi kaplola ya roa kokadi ne tes ngapo lamsang shukri par droge yores roa kandis pulia denso marangela. Ine ko kelenila tene konsul gewa tes turpa rana, then ko consula ningje mepa dapo chagire bes karinsana konsul gewa turpa di gigokap tegyo mares di kandis shik samlo tangoresa.
Mare tate uro soso lamma soso indonesia tola ukoro jise mo boyo churi.
Mi jendagla di nangshin sogore da wachi hakoela.
Yeah.
So Geshe said that he can't know what was in Patrul Rinpoche's mind, but maybe he knew it was more beneficial for them to see this example and follow it, and that would be long-term more beneficial. So it's not that he doesn't have compassion necessarily. He said lamas, they can see a benefit sometimes to behaving in a way that might not be conventional, but it's actually for the best of the particular person. So it could be a situation like that. And it can also be situational, right? Like the Lama might know that, okay, in this particular situation, the place where I'm teaching, the people are well off and able to give this offering. So I'm going to take this offering and then I'm going to use it for another charitable activity or for another Dharma activity and beneficial. But they also might know that the people here making the offerings, right, this place is not able to sustain that sort of generosity. So it's better that I leave these offerings here or return them, and they will be able to make this place more stable in the Dharma. So that can be a way of thinking as well. It's situational. Yeah. So holy beings have all different kind of myriad ways in myriad situations, and we can't always say for sure what the reason was.
That's great. One more follow on just about in terms of core, does it matter the acceptance of the offering in terms of pollution to the teacher?
Yeah, nganso kor samlo tangna roa kor ginetsa samsam di jipa dapo chikyeres dene kelenya dang milenya kor duru droya dang duru madroya gi samso chikyere besa. Geshe said he can only speak generally, but core could be part of a consideration that someone makes in terms of accepting or not accepting, certainly. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
chemetani panil tachi so logi yares.
Chimekare?
Cheme panil.
Barne? Oh.
Mago pan gembati jana.
Yeah.
O korope no do tandi ka namara shuche tanila.
Yeah.
Pache yung di komodis.
So it was actually said that Jerimbache ki getru.
Gituji serado di kading in the biarwa.
So a student, the students of Lama Tsongkhapa, when they were founding monasteries such as Sera and Drepung, because Ganden was founded by Lama Tsongkhapa, of course, and all of the smaller monasteries, it is said that like one of the kind of prayers and considerations they made before deciding where to start a monastery was, if we put the monastery here, could there be an overabundance of offerings, which causes the monks to become lax or corrupt in their spiritual practice, or that could cause the offerings being used dishonestly, which, Jeff, is your idea of this core. So that was part of the considerations holy beings make, sure. So like a highly realized being, right? They're going to check so many different factors that we might not even think of when they're accepting the offerings and so forth.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Yeah. Have we covered everyone, Dave?
Oh, we have a question from Hector on YouTube.
Okay, this will be the last. I think
sure.
Geshe needs a lube break after,
Yeah,
so this will be the
got
last
it.
one.
Yeah.
He says, don't just make it about me. Okay, I also need a lube break then.
Do bodhisattvas accumulate negative karma, not being yet enlightened beings?
Okay, yeah. Jangshub Sempa Dinso, Koronso Sange Male Bardu, Migewe Le Saya Yorebesa. Yeah, yes, they can, because especially those lower bodhisattvas, they can still get angry, and there would be a negative karma connected. Yeah. But how this plays out is not in the resultant suffering we usually think of, but if the bodhisattva gets angry repeatedly, it just pushes his or her progression to the next path or to the next bhumi, to the next ground, like, a couple of weeks, a couple of months further along. So it just means their progression is delayed, if you will. But when a bodhisattva gets angry, is it powerful in the same way it is for an ordinary being like us? We couldn't say that, right? But it still does have some sort of residue effect of making the next realization further off. But we couldn't say that like the negative karma that they're accumulating is going to give the bodhisattva an uncontrolled rebirth in hell or something like this, right? This would not happen. Yeah. So this is actually an area of some debate at the monastery as well, but that's the general idea. Yeah, yeah. And so beings that maybe aren't on the bodhisattva path yet, but are closer to realization, even if they do go to lower realms, it can be for a shorter time. So Geshe is just highlighting that story of the bodhisattva who became Buddha Shakyamuni, remembering that the first time he gave rise to the mind of great compassion was in this hell realm where he saw his companion being tortured. He brought forth a wish to free him from that torture, and then was eventually able to kind of just bounce out of that hell realm immediately. So Geshe said that's the understanding, that it's not impossible to arise the mind of bodhicitta in hell, but is it possible as a total beginner? Maybe something difficult. Yeah. But once but once one has become a bodhisattva, we could pretty much say that an uncontrolled rebirth in the lower realms is no longer a possibility. But that doesn't mean that they can't accumulate sort of residue negative karmas that would act in the way that Geshe mentioned. Listen. So I think we can leave it here. So thank you so much, everybody. And if you want more, then join us next Sunday. We will be here next Sunday. Oh, Geshe wants to say something else. Geshe said the thing too to understand about the bodhisattvas, right, is that even if they have a slight negative karma connected with something, because they have this mind of bodhicitta and are continually engaging in actions to benefit others, it's very easy to dilute and eventually clear away those negative karmas much easier than it is for an ordinary being like us. That's another thing to remember. Chepares. Yeah. So that's why it is said that the bodhisattva has completely cut off the doors to the karma carrying to the 3 lower realms. They're said to have cut off that door. So this is one of the biggest benefits of bodhicitta. So it says in this text and in others that one goes from happy rebirth to happy rebirth until enlightenment. So that necessarily means not falling into the lower realms. So Geshe will leave it there then with that happy note. So thank you so much, everybody. And if you want more, we will be here next Sunday. Thank you so much and take care, everyone.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Thank you.
Everybody. Enjoy.
Thank you.